This episode is sponsored by DroneWorks Ireland, your go-to place when it comes to buying a drone, repairing a drone, and also when you need professionals to carry out any aerial work you may need. Check out their website at www.droneworksireland.ie. You're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So it was an 8-point victory for the Galway senior hurlers yesterday against Waterford in Pearse Stadium, and it brings them a step closer, I suppose, to retaining their Division 1A status. In part one of the show, I'm now joined by John Fallon, and then in part two of the show, I'll be joined by Nickey Brennan, where he'll look ahead to Galway and Kilkenny coming up this Saturday. John, as I mentioned there, it's a step closer to safety for Galway.
It is. It's not mathematically certain, but it is in essence, especially when you allow for the head-to-head. Offaly are gone. Waterford would need to go and beat Tipperary, and Galway would need to lose both of their final games. And I think even score difference could be the fact Galway beat Waterford yesterday. I think that's really top flight status secured. So job really done in that regard. And now they've less pressure on them as far as relegation and all that's concerned for those two remaining games against Kilkenny and Limerick. And you'd like to think, that'll be reflected in the performances as well.
Going on yesterday's performance against Waterford, it was nearly similar to the victory over Offaly in one sense. Just got the job done, did what they had to do. But I suppose the positive from the Waterford game, maybe compared to the Offaly game, was maybe they let Offaly back into that game in the second half. At no stage yesterday did they really let Waterford back into that game. They're always just able to keep 7-8 ahead.
Correct. And I mean, look, you can only play the opposition that's in front of you, and Galway played them well, laid the foundation for victory in the opening half. To score 1-7 without reply in the middle of that, playing against the wind, and to lead by, 2-11 to 11 points at half time, and then to have the elements to come. So full credit to Galway there. But I think by any metric in measuring it, I think you'd have to appreciate how poor Waterford were. And I think a lot of people, I think they themselves were shocked by their own level of their own performance. Because let's face it, they could have and should have beaten Kilkenny in a fairly high tempo game in Nolan Park the previous week. I remember looking at the highlights and that and saying, yeah, this would be good. This would be a good test for Galway. A relegation dogfight, a team coming that had a pep in their step, were very much on the front foot, and just you'd imagine what Galway would need, that sort of test. If you're going to transition as Galway are and try out players, here's a perfect test. And certainly early stages with Waterford yesterday, you're saying, yeah, like, whoa, there's, 2 points fired over inside a minute, and we're moving and shaking and all that. And then just disintegrated. They tried to play a short passing game that they were totally incapable of doing. Their first touch was very poor. Fairness to both teams, that was winter hurling yesterday. It was wet, dreary day, um, cold, everything about it. It didn't lend itself towards it. And in fairness, Galway did master it an awful lot better. But that Waterford challenge was over after 10 minutes. Now, I know we'd say the injury, and Peter Queally said it after to Irla Daly, that saw him moved out of centre back and taken off at half time, disrupted them. But any team going places needs to be able to combat something like that, even if it's your pivotal position. And then we saw Cathal Mannion having much, even more of an influence into the bargain as well. So I think Micheál Donoghue and his management, while they'll be pleased with that, and they'll be pleased with with a lot of the performance. They'll be issuing an awful lot of caution to their own players. Look at Waterford. We're poor. There's no other way to. There's no point in beating around the bush in it. So at the same time, Galway bossed that game throughout. You always felt if they got threatened, there was another gear in them to push on from that. The game, it wasn't a great spectacle. What are we, 2 points each for, what was it, the last 20, 25 minutes or something? No score in the last 13 minutes of play from either team. Um, job done, move on, but I don't think they'll be getting overly excited about an awful lot of it at the same time.
One play you couldn't be not excited about was that goal, first goal. Prendergast obviously and Michael Kidey get 2 points for Waterford straight away, put them into a 2 point lead. But
Yeah.
from Carl Mannion flicking it into his hand, back to Porrick from Jason Rabbit, catch was just unbelievable. And then I don't personally think maybe Ronan Glennon's been given enough credit because it was hard to get that bad away, and the way he finished it was a superb move.
And the depth he had come from
Mm,
to be even in that position. Like he had come right up from wing back. I thought, like, and in many ways, it's a Noel style, that cross field play, that crisscrossing, which any forward loves to see a ball coming from the opposite side rather than one coming down and you've a quarterback or a wing back up your backside or whatever. You've it coming across. Of course, it's always a far better one. And nobody better than Porrick Mannion. He just delivers that sort of perfect height ball. As you said, the take by Jason Rabbit and the layoff.
yeah.
It just a lot of other playing in a corner forward, their instinct would be go themselves. They maybe try for the score or other. He laid it off straight away, and a good finish by Glennon because like they were bearing down on him at that stage. There wasn't room to swing, um, and yet he finished like a corner forward would, more so than a wing back or a player out the field. And you just felt the minute that goal went in, there was only going to be one outcome in it. But the movement of that, and there was a lot of similar balls spread that crisscross, which, on a dirty wet day and everything, you say, love to see this dry sod, fast game. It would work in it. And, you know, I was saying earlier, of all the players that you would say weren't suited to those conditions, Jason Rabbit and Aaron Nyland would be the two you'd say would be, would do far better on a faster pitch on it and all that. And I thought both of them, I thought their touch from both of them was hugely, hugely exciting. Rabbit's flick in the second half, there was in front of the stand where we were, where he took out the defender by just basically continuing the ball. If he had cut the ball, he was going to get bulldozed in over the sideline. He'd been up beside us halfway up the stand. He knew that the chance would be gone, and the flick, the turn, and everything. You're just thinking for such a young lad in it on a dirty wet winter's day, you're just sort of wow, wow. That's you want to see more. You want to see an awful lot more of that. Um, but both himself and Nyland, to me, they were the two with the X factor. Dying to see more of them, to be quite honest.
You can really tell Rabbit's beginning to become a bit of a fan favorite already, isn't it? Like the volume went up a few times in the stand when he gets on the ball.
Yeah, and it's not showboating, it's just what he does with it. I think the fact as well, look at his father was one of the most popular figures,
Mm.
is one of the most popular figures in the GA in the county. None more so than the success in Camogie and his daughters as well. And Joe never but gave everything he had for Athenry and for Galway. Great success with Athenry, less so a lot of the frustrating days with Galway, but you couldn't but admire him. And you're looking at a young fella coming through. He has the same glove. I don't know. Well, I don't know if it's the father's glove or not, but he's that same thing. A lot of the same movements about him. Not so sure Joe would be able to do that flick we saw out on the sideline. Um, but there's a little bit of an X factor about somebody like that when you see them coming in and you just sort of say, this guy is at the start of his journey as an inter-county hurler, and you're seeing a couple of touches like that. Just you're just saying, Josh, dying to see more of that develop it. And you're dead right. And like he was key to that goal. Like the pass from Porrick Mannion out the field was excellent, but it still took him to take it on the outside, pivot, have the hand pass laid off. That was the goal in itself. And in fairness to Glennon, finished it well as we said. But there's yeah, and I hope I'm looking forward to seeing Jason Rabbit next weekend against Kilkenny and indeed beyond that. But equally, as I said, like Aaron Nyland, I thought was outstanding as well.
Michal Donoghue's done something very different with Iron Island too. I was making the point last week on the podcast. Like everyone knows Iron Island around Galway from being an inside forward, but yesterday even his ability when Galway are under pressure to get that ball in the half back line and just go and carry it and run with it. And as mentioned, he finished with 4 points, one free, but he got on countless balls yesterday, and we're really sort of seeing a different side to his game, aren't we?
Yeah, he was roaming a lot. Like he's just very comfortable on the ball. More than Evan, as we saw before that as well. There's a good touch of pace there as well. It's controlled, low center of gravity as well, and lovely, lovely stick work. Um, 3 points against the wind from play, for is a fabulous return for a young fella in it. And up against, I thought a Waterford full back line that was getting more frustrated as the game went on. There was a bit of timber being given out as well, comfortable around all of that. And then when he moved on to the free taking duty, albeit a bit late in the game, and the first one he got was bloody horrible free to have to take and nailed it as well. But like he's motoring along nicely, I know as we were saying, both himself and young Rabbit are both under 20 commitments as well. Are they going to come into play in it? But they're showing they're comfortable at this level, albeit we might learn a lot more. Kilkenny, Limerick, I think we do need to caution as well. Just Waterford just didn't get off the bus yesterday really, and that I suppose should temper anything we're saying as well.
Yeah, even after Waterford went 6 points to 1-2 up, even as we mentioned it there early on, that 1-7 without reply, and when Colin Malloy's second goal came, Galway ahead 2-9 to 6 points, they really just took control then.
Yeah, yeah, and it could even have been more. There
Yeah.
was a few shots dropped short. There was a couple of wides into the bargain as well. Um, But there was no kick out of Waterford and all that. And in fairness, there wasn't because Galway were on top. I thought out round midfield, Keane Fahy, Keane Daniels were excellent. Mannion at centre back was very, very comfortable in that role as well. And then Cahill's brother as well at centre forward. So you had an access there straight away before you brought in anything that was coming from the wing positions. And it was very difficult to find a Galway player that didn't have the better of his man, and they were on top nearly in every position. Tom Monaghan got through a lot. Kieran Killeen got through a lot as well. That just contributed to all of that. And we were sort of waiting for the kick from Waterford, and it just didn't. It didn't. But like they were well beaten in midfield, as you saw. Like there was just nothing coming through there. There were. It just didn't happen for them.
Yeah, you even might have thought after half time that a kick might come for them because I think they were fortunate, as we mentioned there, to only be 2-11 to
Yeah.
11 down at the break.
The war, and if you look at it, Galway actually outscored Waterford after half time. Like you would have expected, maybe if Waterford got 2 or 3 points with the breeze at that stage, they might have got a bit of momentum from it. But there seemed to be two Galway scores for every Waterford one, just in that, albeit like maybe 4 points to two or something like that. But it just killed them off. And in fairness to Galway, it was Galway that killed them off as well. With them, good strong bench came on as well for Galway. A lot of options there, and a lot of lads out to make an impression as well. But from a long way out, like you certainly knew within 3 or 4 minutes of the second half starting, this game is done and dusted. Margin of victory is all that's to be decided. I think Galway will be a bit disappointed that they didn't push on and clock up a 4-20 score
Yeah.
line or something like that.
I
At
think
the same
particularly
time,
after
coming out of
Keenan
it.
Fahy's block, he'd all probably the
Yeah,
hard
yeah,
work
yeah.
done.
And I think fair play to him. I know there was some, I think it might have been Nyland that was inside. I think there might even been another player in it. But I thought fair play to him for going for it.
Mm.
Because often what happens there is the players coming through and they throw out the pass and the goalie is out on top of them. And he did the block himself in the first instance. So he created the opportunity. And, in fairness to Billy Nolan, he produced a couple of great saves that really kept them in, including the penalty save from Aaron Island after that. But his save from Keenan Fahy was top
Yeah.
class. There wasn't a whole lot more you reckoned Fahy could have done. He drilled it, he got a bounce in it, if I remember rightly. Good save, but it was a day actually when there was a lot of good goalkeeping going on around the country, as we saw with Kilkenny and Cork, with their sub goalies in both cases, also producing top class stuff. But I just thought, like we counted up, I think we had 8 second half wides for Galway,
Mm.
couple more frees, drop short stuff, and there was just it wouldn't have taken an awful lot for that 218 scoreline to be gone out to 424, 425, and then it was a mauling. But credit at the same time where it's due, they win a relegation, what should have been a relegation dogfight, comfortably by 8 points. Like, job done.
It may be something to be looking to tidy up. They tried it yesterday on certain occasions where Stephen O'Halloran and the defence tried to work it out. Maybe yesterday wasn't the day for that at stages. Like they did get caught once or twice when they did try and work that out.
In fairness, you got to try these things,
Yeah.
and even if there's an error, it's not going to be fatal at this stage. Again, I would go back to what I said earlier. Even if it was working, you'd have to temper it. Would a Cork full forward line be in on top of a cornerback picking up a ball there a lot quicker? Will Kilkenny? We'll see that next Saturday. So you're trying to balance this thing. You see something happening, and you sort of say to yourself, well, how would this fare out against Cork, Tip, Limerick, Clare, Kilkenny, maybe those five, and you're trying to gauge, but all you can do is guess it into it. I'd say top marks, try these things. Of course try it, see what works, keep opposition guessing into it. Like we saw when it does work and when the touch is there, you see the likes of the goal that ended up with Ronan Glennon scoring. It came from having the confidence to drill those sort of passes, take that opportunity. So why not? And like, let's face it, you'd like to think they're going to get a lot more of a test from a bruised Kilkenny team next Saturday. And I think that'll teach us a lot more. But certainly this, I think they can take a lot of positives out of Sunday without losing the run of themselves.
I had to say, even after watching the game back, even last night, I love the attitude of Joshua Ryan and Kieran Hanrahan in particular. Even Hanrahan yesterday, that ball he gives and Nyland just gets caught, but just his ability to keep running. He did it shortly after the break as well. And I think with the way Galway are beginning to play now and work the ball more out of the back, Joshua Ryan and Kieran Hanrahan are vital players in a system like this.
Like, it's hard to believe it was Kieran Hanrahan's debut
Mm.
yesterday because he looked so comfortable in everything he was about. And that's testimony as well to where Loughrea have brought themselves and their players, that they can just slot straight into an inter-county setup and into a team seamlessly like that, and create an impression. And you sort of say it wouldn't matter what jersey he had on him yesterday in terms of what colour jersey, you just, and he's straight away, like, what's it now? I think it's a 30 player, 29, 30 players Galway.
29, yeah, nine new
Yeah,
debutants.
9 debutants in it.
Yeah.
Like, there's an awful lot of options straight away. And not just for ordinary selection ones, but when you get into championship and you're playing almost week on week, when inevitably there's injuries, inevitably there's wear and tear, and you're going down the depth chart, and it's not nearly who's our second choice cornerback, but you need maybe who's our third choice and below that. And I would think they're getting that depth chart increased the whole time by, like, of all the debutants or all the relatively new ones, you're trying to say, so is there anyone that's coming really and it hasn't happened for them, or they need to go back and mature? I don't think that's applicable from anything we have seen. Certainly nobody springing to mind that you'd say, oh look, they're not ready for that level yet. On the contrary, in fairness to the clubs, I think an awful lot of that is what they've done there carries forward into that, and that's just supreme levels of fitness. Like, I think I was saying, I think I said it before in this podcast. I'm amazed at the level of fitness that club players, county players. It's just taken as a given. Like, back when we started reporting on matches, we genuinely at league matches would comment and assess the fitness level of players. Mainly because it was so obvious. It was so obvious who had work done and who hadn't, and not just the way they were filling out the jerseys or that. That's completely not gone now. You could take a fella from junior hurling and shove him into an inter-county setup, and whatever about touch or anything, fitness won't isn't the issue. Like, it's fantastic to see for amateur players. But as you said, like the Joshua Ryan, who's that bit further down the track as well. respect to Kieran Hannon to come in there and just
Even
such an accomplished
Ke
performance.
even Keane Daniels as well, because I know he was really impressive for Tommy Lekins this year in the championship,
Yeah,
but he isn't a player that's played underage for Galway, and to come in and fit in yesterday, and I even thought his 2 points and it worked
correct.
great, and even to get through a full 70
Yeah,
minutes
yeah,
yesterday is testament to him.
yeah. And is he a player that could give you options in other positions as well? Like, is there, is there a half back in him as well if needed? He just looked comfortable around the place. And he said the points he got were excellent. They were right through it, um, and to a degree, you could say they have the jersey now. I know, you've Gavin Lees and Daithí Burks and so many more, to either come back from injury or on the outside there. But, if you get the chance, you got to take it. And I would think Keane Daniels came off yesterday and said, I gave that a good shot. Yeah, all of that is positive. The only asterisk beside it is, a lot of the teams Galway are going to meet at the business end of it will be better than Waterford were yesterday, including Waterford if they meet them later on. I just think it just didn't happen for them. Didn't happen for them this time.
Stephen O'Halloran giving Derek Fahey a real test now for the number one jersey, do you think?
Certainly is. You know, like puck outs right through, and you sort of wonder as well though. You're going to need to make a decision on your goalkeeper and
Yeah.
decide who's your number one, who's your number two, who's your number three, even into that. So.
Because even if you think if he starts this weekend against Kilkenny, it's his third start in a row. So then you're
Yeah,
beginning to think, are they going to go with him? I know
yeah,
Ian
yeah,
Murphy's been injured, but if he does start 3 games in a row, you're getting closer and closer to the Leinster Championship.
totally and absolutely. Like we're not going to have a league final, so really what you're talking, you see, I suppose you have to take it in the context of the Leinster Championship as well. Galway have two matches left in the league, one against Kilkenny, one against Limerick, and then Championship starts with Kilkenny. So you're nearly saying to yourself, you need to have your Championship team sorted out. Um, we'll say in these two remaining league games. Because if they beat Kilkenny in Pearse Stadium in the opening round of the Leinster Championship, you're 70, 80% on the way to a Leinster final at that stage. They will beat Kildare, they will beat Offaly. Dublin, Wexford, um, you know, you'd fancy their chances in all of that. So the key one is Galway Kilkenny in Pearse Stadium in the opening one. So of all of those pool or group games in Leinster, the one you reckon they need their best team out is that Kilkenny one. Funnily enough, you have an opportunity then to experiment afterwards if necessary. They won't be saying that out loud. They won't show disrespect to anyone in that way. But realistically, we looking at it. So you'd say to yourself, if Stephen O'Halloran is not going to be your goalkeeper against Kilkenny in the championship, how long are you going to leave him in for the remainder of the league? Or are you
Yeah.
just going to go with them and say, look, it's his jersey to lose? Um, we'll probably won't announce the team until Friday night at about 10 o'clock or whatever. We're not going to know. We'll get a better idea there. But the man has done absolutely nothing wrong. There was one wayward one yesterday, but in the gist of the whole lot of it,
It's
not
great.
not
It's great to see how it's not affecting him as a new goalkeeper in his first season.
absolutely, absolutely. Like I mean, how many people following Galway hurling and all that would have said, a couple of months ago that for two or three matches run in the league at key games in it that Stephen O'Halloran from Propel would be the goalie. Don't think a lot, to be quite honest. So
Yeah, I don't think many would have been backed on before the club
yeah,
championship, really.
yeah.
And
But credit credit management to the whole lot for giving them the opportunity, and full credit to him for taking it. And that's what you want. That's what you want. And you're putting pressure on people that's there. And look, let's face it, if you're going to progress in a championship, you need pressure, and you need to be able to deal with it and fire on from it or whatever. There's no point in being passive about all of that. So it's another one. When you're doing your checklist, you're putting a positive beside it. And so far in the league, it's been mainly that. But um, notwithstanding the opening two results, of course, as well in it. But it's gearing up well. There's no doubt it's gearing up well.
Obviously, still a good few players out injured at the minute. Darren Marcy made his return yesterday. Surprisingly played the game at wing back, but obviously Micheál confirmed after the game that Dahi Burke is sidelined with a hamstring injury at the minute. Gavin Lee injured as well at the minute. Rory Burke, haven't seen him for a while now.
Yeah,
Since the Tipperary game, yeah. Fintan Burke, another player we haven't seen yet this year. I think John Cooney's still out injured at the minute, so there is a growing list of injuries, and I'm sure they would like to get some of these players back, particularly by that last game against Limerick.
yeah, you'd imagine so. And I think also what you'd be trying to factor in there, if they had everyone available right now and everybody on top of their game, and they were sitting down this week to pick the team to play Kilkenny in the championship, where would they be laying out? Who's their goalie? Who's their fullback? Who's their centre back? There's three straight off. We're talking about the goalie, fullback, Killian Trayers. You know, I don't
Yeah,
think Patrick Mannion is going to be the championship centre back, but who are? So, in terms of like, is it Fintan Burke? If we'll say, if at this point they think they know who the fullback and centre back is, then it's absolutely key that they get those lads back from injury. If not, and they feel this is something they can move around, you're sort of going to always accept you're going to have players injured. Have we lads to slot into it, to settle into it? I'd be fairly old school. I would always think, geez, you need the number six position filled and build a team, build a team around that. And I think, in fairness, to back up my own argument, you look at it yesterday, we were saying when Irla Daly went limping early on for Waterford, went out of it, it certainly impacted them. Porrick Mannion slotted in uh, beautifully at centre back there yesterday. You know, went through power hurling, particularly when it was needed in that. So if, sake of example, Dahi Burke is your centre back and Finton is your full back, geez, you need them back next couple of weeks. But I don't know. I think they've been around long enough, the Galway management, to know you cannot, you make plans and God laughs. You know, you need to be able to adapt to injuries and loss of form even into that
it's
as
it's
well.
it's
So
hard to see at the moment how Killian Trayers doesn't play number three for Galway in the
yeah,
championship.
absolutely nothing wrong in that. Let's see, and let's face it, Kilkenny attack coming on Saturday isn't as strong as Kilkenny attacks of before. From I think all the evidence so far in it. Um, Limerick could be a different kettle of fish in the
Yeah.
final one of it. And I think we might learn a lot more, from them. And that's why I think when people are talking about the position Galway are in, by and large, they're safe. You have two matches that, you're not going to qualify for the league, you're not going to get relegated, yet they're very important games. So it's a great position to be in, to be able to go out and give these a right shot without sort of the pressure or the burden that a potential relegation might have. I know they're not mathematically safe, as we said, but it's a good position for them to be in, to have a shot at this stuff.
I know last year when you were on the podcast, we were talking after the Leinster final and we referenced the point that there's probably more questions than answers. But at the minute now, does it feel like maybe for the first time in a while we can say that we can see what the Galway senior hurlers are trying to develop? We can more so, I suppose, see a style of play that's beginning to develop here.
Yeah, very much so. And I think you'd like to think one they could adapt as well. I think key part of it, I'd say, if you and I sat down now and picked the Galway starting 15, or if two or three other people did, they it's quite possible we would have very different teams.
Yeah.
All justified in your selection process in it or whatever. So we're a bit away from a settled team, or what looks like a settled team in it. So that's one sort of factor or question mark into that. Equally, we'll say, that short passing game, that moving game. against a team like Waterford yesterday, you can make hay, but against maybe like we saw with Cork, who can close out a lot of that, you need to have your plan B as well and maybe go long. But just a lot of the distribution from Galway yesterday, notwithstanding some sloppy handling there, but a lot of the distribution was very good. That drilling those pinpoint passes. And you'd like to think as the weather gets better and games, the tempo of the games increase, it looks like a style that's suited to that rather than one that might struggle with it. Um, that said, watching, having come home from Pearse Stadium yesterday, and albeit watching highlights, but watching Cork and Kilkenny in Nolan Park looked like several years ahead of what we had witnessed in Pearse Stadium. Um, Now, the highlights can be deceptive as well. I appreciate that, but it just looked like a higher, tougher tempo. Um, would at the same time would Galway have stepped up into that? There's no reason to suggest they wouldn't. And that's why I'm looking forward to next Saturday. I think we could. Hopefully, we won't have the wind, or rain, or that. The surface in Pearse Stadium is very good. It's fabulous when you consider the weather it's got.
Yeah,
Uh,
I thought yesterday, even before the game, the pitch looked in great condition.
Absolutely. We were there the previous week for the football match, and I live in Saltiller up the road from it, and I thought, gosh, this game is in doubt. It has to be. Just even the floods that was around us, and yet it was in super nick. Unfortunately, they can't do anything about the wind or the rain, and that did take, I thought, a bit from yesterday. Not necessarily in the scoring of that, but just in terms of the tempo of the game or the spectacle of it. And a small crowd, it must be said as well.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Do you think is it a concern? Like just under 5,000 yesterday. I know the
Just
weather's
over four, I believe,
yeah,
just over
just over four.
4,100.
Yeah. Like that was a home game. It was a big relegation game as it was talked about before the game, and to only get that crowd, I did expect there
Yeah,
would be more.
there's a couple of factors, and it wasn't on television, and it
Yeah,
wasn't being
that
streamed. So if you wanted to see that game, you needed to be there.
yeah, you would have thought that added to it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I just, and that's part of it, and that's what concerned me. But at the same time, I do, and it's an old chestnut with me. I just don't think the GA, and I don't think Galway GA sells its products particularly well. I was in the sports ground the day on Saturday. There was 8,500 people in it, and it was pointed out to me only six of them were from the region. And yesterday we had 26 togged. They were all from Galway, obviously. They were all from networks in it. And yet, all of last week, we're constantly getting emails from Connacht Rugby. We're being invited to press conferences, and such a player and such a coach is available and free to talk, and you're welcome with open arms because they know you're representing the public and the message you send out. Like, we work for somewhere in the region of 20-25 outlets in Ireland. We'll say through Media West, where we supply newspapers, websites, all of that. And for the entire week, for 5 days running up to that Connacht game, we had stuff going out either in the form of player interviews or coach ones or whatever. It's not the only reason people show up to matches, but it is a factor. It generates
Mm.
generates storylines, generates interest. Team is announced, you're told why, so on and so forth. Galway team, I think, was announced Friday night. As I said, it was announced the same
Very
time as
nice, yeah.
the shipping forecast, I think, goes out around the same time. Um, People turned up yesterday not knowing whether Dahi Burke was injured or Gavin Lee was injured or any of these, or were they dropped or were they trying out or any of this. And to your diehard hurling person in Ardrahan or Gort or New Win, they're going to come in and watch the match anyway. They don't, who's selected or who's not. They'll live with that. And you get 4,000 at the game. It's the other 4,000 who might have shown up if they'd known Keane Daniels was midfield or Young Rabbit was getting another go on corner forward. And if maybe you'd heard during the week that, Kieran Hanrahan talking about the joy and the honour of making his debut for Galway. Very articulate lad. I've spoken to him several times when he was with like Loughrea, and just generate that interest in it. And I go back to the previous week, Galway and Roscommon, and I'm not even going necessarily Galway G, I'm talking about GA in general. Galway and Roscommon played two division neighbouring counties, key match, the whole lot, and it was a Crow Park organised press conference involving the two captains. It was staged on Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock. At that stage, the Tuam Herald was in all the shops available for sale. The kind of Tribune where you're working now was heading for the printers and gone. No countenance made of the local media actually interviewing these players. And it was John Maher and Kieran Murtagh, two very articulate guys, great stories to tell, different stories to tell about their own careers. And I just think the GA in general and Galway GA, because they can lead, they don't need Crow Park in this. They need to do much more to, for the want of a better way of putting it, sell their product. But like you look at all those guys, Joshua
I agree with
Ryan,
you too, even because with the way the team is at the minute, there's so many supporters and so many people who put it this way. It's when we're talking about hurling, people are watching all these players with helmets on their heads. I
I,
can guarantee you, if there was a lot of Galway people and some of these players were walking down the street, some of them wouldn't know who
I
they are.
don't think
And
some of them, I think most of them
yeah,
knew. And I think I said it before on this. I remember being at a Walsh Cup match probably 2 years ago now in Ballinasloe, and um, there was a few of us in the press box. We were all local. I won't name them because I don't want to embarrass John McIntyre, but there was a few of us in it, and the teams they were going through their warm up, and I spotted one lad, helmet off or whatever, and he was a block of a man, but I didn't recognise him, and I said that there was two or three of us from, we're all local ones. I said, who is that? And nobody in the press box knew. And this was a guy who was good enough to get selected on Galway senior squad and sort of the three or four local stripes. And in fairness, the other lads, they'd know 10 times more about it than I would. None of us recognised him. The minute we saw a number on his back or we saw the colour of his helmet, we actually recognised who he was and where he was from. And I think that is the same with an awful lot of the lads there. So you have players who, once they come off the pitch, are anonymous. You can get to know them through their style, the colour of their helmet, whatever it might be, or that. But once they come off the pitch, are anonymous and unheard of. And all of them have brilliant stories. I've no doubt they've great stories to tell.
yeah,
But
I
you
agree with you
don't
there.
get to
There's
be,
so many of them have different
you don't
stories
get
to
to be
tell.
an elite sports person, whether it's hurling, football, camogie, or any of it, without actually, having a good backstory in it. And I know where the GPA, I think the GPA have realised far too late, or at least late in the day, but it might, that their player body is, when I say suffering, I don't, people don't always immediately equate that to financial. I'm not talking about that at all, but young people need heroes in their sport to follow them. But if they can't recognise them and they know nothing about them, and this day and age of, if you're cranking up some, if you're in the media and nothing happens. I think I was saying before, we do an awful lot of stuff for ladies Gaelic football, where the attitude to it is the more we can profile our players, do any of that. We do a big interview every week that goes out to 420 reporters and media outlets every Friday, free of charge. Last Friday we did an interview with Leanne Cohn, and the whole tenor of the interview was about she was on a good goal scoring run, as indeed a Galway uh, ladies football team. And it was about how they were not afraid to go for goals and do all of this. And I was thinking of it afterwards. And even I remember putting a heading and saying, no, like was going for goal was the catch line on it and all this sort of stuff. And I said, I hope I'm not sort of putting the commentators cursing it. Galway beat Kerry intra-league. They got one goal and Leanne Cohn scored it. I rest my case. As in, there's no correlation. There never was between somebody having a decent media profile and underperforming in it. And I just think they need to just do, I think they just need to sell it a bit more. As I said, the 4,000 that were there yesterday would show up if there was no stand and they had to stand in the rain for it. But you won't get the other 4,000 or 6,000. that you need to generate an atmosphere. You need to generate a crowd in that, and I think as well. I think there's an element of it being disrespectful to players not to trust them to go out and tell their story, for the want of a better way of putting it.
Uh, I agree with you there, and it'd be interesting to see what sort of crowd now shows up on Saturday night. The fact of being on RTE as well, you'd wonder, well, maybe some people just be comfortable rather watching that game at home. But just before we finish up, John, free taking for Galway, it's obviously been swapped between Aaron Island and Carl Mannion throughout this National League. Who would you like to see free taker? Because obviously Carl's been so good from play, but he has missed a few
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well from frees.
Okay. If you take it, if I'll put it this way, I would like to see Aaron Nyland as the Galway free taker. Anything I've seen of him so far, he's well capable of it. And he can, contribute a lot more into it. Colin Mannion is the key guy for Galway up front. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think he's a very accomplished free taker as well. Even if yesterday, I think it was three we saw him put wide, there was a couple of more drop short in it. But I think you can get so much out of Cathal Mannion. You don't need to give him the burden of free taking as well on top of that. If you have somebody like you'd imagine the likes of Aaron Knight, no more than Evan before that, you're talking about players who are in the 90% returns of delivering frees in it, in addition to a lot else. And I suppose the key question for Galway, and it'll tell us a lot about it as well, do they see Aaron Nyland as a starting forward in the championship? Um, and if they don't, why would they make him the free taker now and take it away from Colin Mannion and have to revert back? Um, so you can see the dilemma they have in that as well.
Are
But
you surprised in that sense that we haven't seen Evan then? Because we all know,
absolutely
yeah, because he didn't see much game time last year.
correct.
He got man of the match in the World Cup final, and then we haven't seen him at all
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
league.
And like as good a free taker as any you're going to see as well in it. So, and I suspect put it this way, we know Cathal Mannion is going to be a starting forward for Galway. So that's your guaranteed. You have a free taker starting. And I suppose the reality of it is we don't know whether Aaron Ireland. And when I say we, I think Galway management is similarly included in that as well. You can understand why they might pivot a bit there, but I just thought yesterday, like we ended up with Colin Mannion, like he was a 2 points from 3 points, 2 or 3 points from play as well. There was a lot of link work, and then you're going onto the freeze as well, and some of them didn't work out from yesterday. I just thought when they got Young Ireland to take one, as was said earlier, like it was out on the sideline into that sort of breeze, all of that like wet ball, the full lot, and my God, he nailed it. It's at the minute it left her, we did you were not far from me.
Hmm.
The minute it left us hurl, it was only going one place. But I just suspect he's under 20 duties as well. He's on a so you make him your free taker, and then come championship time, maybe you're not starting him, you're reverting back. It's a little look at it, isn't it? If you flip that around, isn't it a brilliant position to be in that you're looking at two or three guys that you know are high percentage return free takers, and to have those options as well to come into it. And that's look at given the demands of a provincial campaign and then how quickly it gets into knockout, you need, as we were saying, you need the depth chart. You need to be able to go down a few positions into that. If nothing else, Aaron Ireland has shown us he's well capable of stepping up to this. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see a bit more. You could see a good few changes for Saturday evening in that team selection. Um, as I said, we'll get it with the ship and forecast late on Friday night. We'll assess it from there.
Yeah, I think even similar like Darren McCarthy last year for Tipperary was obviously under 20 as well, and they stuck with him. So maybe
He stuck with him, and it was abundantly clear early on he was on to stay on. you
Yeah,
know,
so
there
that's
was,
nearly something you could do with Iron Island too.
yeah, yeah. But I just think nobody's ready yet to make that commitment just yet. Maybe a couple of games more. In a way, it's a pity that that Kilkenny match is starting the championship because you're sort of saying to yourself, you have a chance to experiment the next two games. You really don't the start of the championship, and then you have a chance. It's bit of cart before horse. But look at it, they're good options for Galway to have, and there's more of a bounce and more of an optimism now than there has been for some considerable time. I think people will be sober enough to assess where Waterford's challenge was on Sunday. I think, as we were saying, since Galway won the All Ireland, it's been a Munster team that's won it ever since. We need to look at that. It's those few counties in Munster against the rest of the country. Let's forget we're all in the Leinster Championship, whether it's Antrim or any of these. It's it's that measurement. Get through the league, hopefully win Leinster. That should be the
Yeah.
target, and then take your chances against. Hopefully, the rest of them will kill each other down in Munster by the time they come out. But it's good, isn't it? Isn't it good to be looking forward to it?
Yeah, and just even finally, John, losing to Kilkenny twice last year, and in the manner we lost to them twice in the championship, I think they were probably disappointing performances, really, when you look at it in the overall context. So, psychologically, for Galway to beat Kilkenny this weekend, make it 3 wins on the trot, I think it would be start to see that bit of momentum coming.
Yeah, and I think you'll get a kick out of Kilkenny. They must be disappointed at the way they got turned over by Cork in their own backyard. So that alone should put a bit of spice into it. The fact they know they'll have to come there, what will it be, 5 weeks after that, 4 or 5 weeks. They want to sort of set a tone as well in all of that. So we should see a bit in it. Would it be damaging to Galway, or you know what impact will Saturday's outcome have come championship time? Probably not an awful lot other than it could be huge one way or another, but it'd be a good one for Galway to win. Um, particularly if you know that's a winnable match, more so than going to the Gaelic rounds and beating Limerick, who might have notions of a league final or something in it. So, um,
It
at the
could
same,
actually become, if you think of it in one sense, if uh, Limerick lose to Cork this weekend and Galway to beat Kilkenny, you'd have Limerick and Galway on 6 points going into the
yeah, yeah,
last
you'd
game.
have a lot riding on it. So, I think the key thing would be to build on that, not lose at home to one of the big teams, which Kilkenny still are, um, and take your chances from that with it. But there's certainly a lot, and I would imagine the interest will grow with the momentum and everything. We even see it. We have the sun out in Salt Hill now, even today. So it's starting to look up the whole lot of it. There's no doubt about that. And look, it's an exciting few weeks and couple of months we're looking forward to.
Absolutely. Well, John, great stuff, and thanks a million for your time.
You're welcome, Paul. Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. Delighted now to be joined by former GA President Nickey Brennan. Um, Nickey, obviously, as I say, former GA President there, what did you make watching on Congress and everything at the weekend?
Well, I suppose the item that created all the headlines, Paul, was the demonstration relating to the Alliance sponsorship of the leagues and whatnot. Look, I was very much in the room. Former presidents tend to be located very close to the top table. Maybe that's to do with our age, Paul, and they need to keep us close to where the president is speaking and we can hear what's going on. But anyway, we were very close to that. And actually, at the time, they walked into the room. Now I went in about 9:30 because there was reports from the various workshops, and there was a number of people outside the door, and they certainly were quite vociferous, and they were fairly angry. Let's put it that way. And I was when we were discussing the whole certification motion, which is a new process the G wants to initiate in relation to the composition of county panels, backroom teams, and all of that. And it was getting it stiff enough discussion now. It was far from clear if it was going to get through. Now, Jarlath Burns was had decided quite rightly that he was going to work through lunch and get all this stuff over and practically finish by 2 maybe, and then have lunch. But when these people entered the room, obviously the core of, I don't know how many was there, maybe 20. They obviously were very noisy, and there was no point in confronting them because they were quite dangerous looking, to be honest about it. And they came up towards the stage. They tried to confront Jarlath. He just sat back and said nothing. They went in behind the stage, put up banners. Obviously, they got photographs. They got TV coverage, which is what they wanted. And then Jarlath decided that he'd break for lunch. And obviously, when they came back after lunch, then resumed discussion on that particular motion, which needed 50% to get through. It got 59. I'm not certain it might have passed had it been just without any interruption, whether that might have happened. But it's through anyway, and there's a lot of detail to be filled in there. But look, it was quite disruptive. They were very confrontational, very people who were you wouldn't like to be in their company, and they came across to me as probably in a lot of cases professional protesters and all that. So it wasn't nice, but I'm sure up there today in Croke Park, we were talking here on a Monday evening, people were asking about the level of security because it was, in my view, it was a no-brainer for the place to be locked down and keep it safe, given what was expected in terms of the protest. Now, I should say, there was plenty of other people outside the gate who disagreed with what the GAA in relation to the Alliance sponsorship. That's quite in order, and I'm sure they were okay. They made their presence felt outside, but they didn't come into the building. So I think Jarlath was quite clear in his condemnation of it, and asked maybe that those who were of the particular GAA well-known people who were leading the protest from a point of view of the names, if they might come out and say something. But I haven't heard anything from them. But it was not a nice event, to be fair to Jarlath, and two of the stewards inside, security people, were injured. To what extent I don't know, but it was not a nice thing to happen, and I think there's a lesson for the GAA in future that when it's holding events like Congress, it does needs to beef up its security.
Really interesting to get your views there, Nicky, and I didn't realize you were at Congress at the weekend. It does feel like these Alliance protests could go on as the league goes on. Seen in Newbridge Saturday night after they're finishing up with RT that I suppose flags were being held, and there was a couple of protesters there. I know there was a couple as well before Mayo Armagh as well at the weekend.
Paul, that's probably you're probably going to go on, I'd say, for a bit. Yeah, that might be the case, but from a GA perspective, this topic is finished with now. It's not going to be revisited. It has gone. They've gone through it in detail. They brought in some eminent people, and to be quite honest about it, Paul, the whole issue of alliance, if people would only realise, there's lots of other different sports and sports
Yeah.
people involved, and companies involved with alliance in this country. So I mean, everything seems to often land on the GA. That the GA is expected to be the conscience of the country here, and I think it's time maybe we put more of a focus on looking after everything to do with our own game and clubs and whatnot. And maybe at times we're often too willing. Admittedly, we're remunerated for it. Governments seem to look to the GA to promote various events and activities and schemes and whatnot. And I'm not sure if the appreciation is shown there. But I wish those people would actually think long and hard about other sports organisations, about other sports people, and other companies that have alliances with global organisations, global, be they technological, be they pharmaceutical companies. And if you dig deep enough, I'm sure you'll find there's some connection with Israel. In fact, Tommy Conlon had a very good article in yesterday's Sunday Independent outlining that in some detail. So I would ask people to maybe read that article and just reflect on what Tommy had to say in that article.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. Just on Congress then as a whole, Nikki, I think it was a really positive Congress, particularly for the club player. I suppose the All Ireland's not being pushed back into August. There was a lot of counties voting in that instance wanted to keep the split season as it was. Obviously keeping minor as a, I suppose it's separate All Ireland final day too. So some real positives out of Congress at the weekend.
Well, I think the whole motion to bring the All Ireland's 2 weeks into August, I think that had got a fair bit of airing, and as Pádraig Duffy was leading the committee looking at that, and it's general custom and practice that where a committee has dealt with a matter, that the person leading that committee will go off and explain to Congress delegates what exactly the thinking in mind here is. But Pádraig's first uttering when he went up on the podium to talk about that, well, look, I know this is going to be lost anyway. And it was lost in the context of all the publicity. But I thought Pádraig made one very good point, and I think people need to reflect on this. You have the two All Ireland football semi-finals on one Sunday. The following Sunday you have the All Ireland hurling final, and the following Sunday you have the All Ireland football final. He made the point, quite rightly in my view, that the hurling final in between those two football games is absolutely smothered. There is no chance, there is no publicity about it, and there is, as soon as the Sunday night is over, all the attention is on the upcoming All Ireland football final. So the bottom line is that the loser in all of this, despite what people might think, is actually hurling. Hurling is getting a bit of a raw deal around the place at the moment, and I think hurling counties. And I would say your county is certainly one of them, and they were vehemently opposed to this. But I'd ask them to reflect on how hurling has been lost in that whole football scene towards the end of the season.
If we move towards obviously Galway and Kilkenny this Saturday, Nicky, on your own views, you're obviously working with Kilkenny Community Radio. Do you feel the criticism has been maybe a bit too harsh on Kilkenny so far?
Well, I'm not so sure, Paul, if there has been that much criticism. I think, look, people, if you just look back a number of years, obviously it is 2015 since Kilkenny won in All Ireland, and they've managed to being very, very regular winners in the Leinster Championship. They have been getting very close to All Ireland finals, getting beaten very narrowly by winners over recent times. So Kilkenny have been getting close enough. But you're right. I mean, right now it doesn't look as if 2026 is going to bridge the gap back to 2015 for Kilkenny. I think that's fair. But I do think at the start of this year, we knew we lost Hugh Lawler and Billy Ryan. They were big losses because Hugh Lawler was the best fullback that has been around probably for the last 5 years. Billy Ryan put in a serious shift in 2025 and got an All-Star nomination for it. So we were losing two very serious players there when they went. Adrian Mullen is out of action at the moment and is hopefully back for the championship, although that's not a certainty. So we have not been getting the flow of talent from underage because we haven't been winning at underage. I mean, it's a long time since we won a minor, and while we won an under 20 in more recent times, there is a certain question mark about that because that happened at a time when under 20 players, if they played any hurling for the county in the championship, they couldn't play 20s. And I mean, I would look back on a game between Kilkenny and Galway in Tullamore that actually went to extra time. Now, that particular day, Galway could not play Tiernan Killeen and Gavin Lee, and I would be pretty sure that had those two lads been available to Galway that day, I think they would have beaten Kilkenny, and that would have put an end to Kilkenny's under 20s. But they were a team that were improving all along. But unfortunately, none of that team has really made any serious headway onto the Kilkenny panel, and they should be the guys who should be really challenging for positions. But the positive this year has been a number of lads have come through. Rory Garrity, a young lad from Johnstown from last year, Ivan Bulger from last year. Lee Moore has been on the wings there for a bit. He's not been too bad. Timmy Clifford was actually part of that under 20 team. He was injured yesterday again. Cork didn't play. So look, there's a couple of younger lads starting to kind of show signs that there might be possibilities. But to be quite honest about it, we've been a bit like Galway. While Galway are showing a little bit of signs that they've found a little bit of new talent. I mean, over the last 5 years in particular, managers would have pulled their hair out thinking there was real talent coming from their minors and under 20s. And when they got onto the senior team, they didn't show that particular level of talent at all. So Kilkenny could be in a bit of spot of bother like that as well. And because expecting these guys now to step up and become senior intercounty hurlers of top stature immediately, is might be asking a fair bit. Because if you take Ivan Bulger and Rory Garrett, for example, they're both from junior clubs in Kilkenny. I've always contended that if you're playing junior club hurling in Kilkenny, it's a very serious step up to play senior intercounty hurling. There's no question about that. And that's a challenge that Kilkenny have at the moment. And we need our big names, the likes of Owen Cody and Mossy Keoghan, Keane Kenny now at this stage. Fellas, a couple of players like that, they need to be the leaders going forward now. And we're going to be depending a lot on them. And they put in a decent enough shift yesterday against Cork. Cork deserved to win the match. The 3 point margin probably flattered Kilkenny. There's no point in saying otherwise that the Cork might have got another goal or two. But Kilkenny had chances as well. But Cork were definitely deserving of it. And I think the game in particular pointed, I think, that Hugh Lawler's absence from full back, I think, showed that Kilkenny under a high ball could be a bit more vulnerable than might have been the case, particularly in relation to Alan Walsh's last goal, which he plucked the ball out of the air. If Hugh Lawler was in the vicinity, that wouldn't have happened. So there's a few things Kilkenny need to work on. And like they were a bit static in the first half and didn't really move fast enough to the ball in attack, allowing the defenders to come out like hares out from their position and were getting to the ball first. So look, Kilkenny are on a learning curve, a lot of these lads, and they're slowly improving match by match now. And I think they'll learn a lot more from the Galway game on Saturday evening.
What have you made of the league campaign so far, Nicky? Obviously, it's the same as Galway, 2 wins and 2 losses. Obviously, their victories coming against Waterford and Offaly and defeats to Limerick and obviously Cork yesterday.
Well, sure, look at it's the same at Kilkenny. Kilkenny have beaten Waterford and Offaly as well. So really, the two teams are going in against one another on Saturday night in much the same position. Now, Galway do appear to be they've brought in a number of new players. In fairness to me, Hall, I always thought it was going to take him until this year to kind of put a shape on the team. And a few of the older lads have moved on, and he's getting a fair go out of some of these younger lads as well. And now I think it'll be a much stiffer test against Kilkenny. While Kilkenny are far from the team that Kilkenny would have gone up to Salt Hill in the past. I think at the same time there'll be plenty of effort from Kilkenny, and it will ask a lot of questions of this Galway team, and a lot more will be known about them. The two goals were clearly the difference yesterday in the first half. Excuse me, against Waterford, and probably Waterford will be disappointed the way they conceded those two goals. But I think there'll be plenty of questions asked of both teams on next Saturday night. I won't be at the match, but I'm looking forward to the game, watching it on TV, just to see how both teams kind of face up against one another and what they're going to bring to the table, because there is going to be a number of new players on board and a number of new positional plays as well. And that's as much of interest as anything, because Kilkenny have really altered their centre defence for fairly obvious reasons. That Mikey Carey at full back, he's gradually getting into the position. Although yesterday I noticed that there was 3 or 4 times he was moved up the field about 60 or 70 yards with the ball. He was still thinking in half back thinking mode, I suspect, at that stage. Dara Corcoran is making a decent fist of centre half back now. And so look, it does look at the moment as if those two guys are the 3 and 6 for this year. But they'll get plenty of test in Salt Hill on Saturday night and the following weekend against Tipperary and Thurles. Because if Waterford beat Tipperary on Sunday, sorry, next weekend I should say, it means that Kilkenny will have to go to Thurles the following weekend and beat Tipperary to avoid relegation. So that's next weekend. We'll decide if that's going to be Kilkenny's lot. If they lose in Salt Hill and Tip lose in Walsh Park. So there's a number of big outcomes next weekend that could determine a fair bit. And look, at Kilkenny won't want to be going down to 1B. They'll want to stay up among the top notches. And the other thing it would do as well, with the exception of Galway, if that was to happen, it would mean then that Division 1A would be entirely made up of Munster teams plus Galway, which probably in terms of the league will be almost a second version of the Munster Championship.
Yeah, just in terms of that as well, Tipperary beat Waterford. Obviously, it keeps going. Kilkenny both safe as well
Yeah, correct.
for next year. In terms of these young fellas, you mentioned them earlier on coming through for Kilkenny, and obviously we haven't seen Adrian Mullen or TJ Reid yet for Kilkenny. But in terms of these young fellas for Kilkenny, do you think they'll be able to step up when it comes to Leinster Championship?
I do. I think these lads have shown a good character now. They've shown playing with the twenties that they're decent players. Rory Garrett has had a very good league. To be fair, he was sick yesterday. Ivan Bulger took his place. Ivan Bulger was one of Kilkenny's better players in the All Ireland under 20 final last year against Tipperary. So look, you're hoping that they are going to be the guys to step in, because they're the first in the queue now. I mean, anybody else who might be challenging for positions are probably coming from the same under 20 crop that these lads were involved in. So they appear to be in the top of the queue. And look, it's so far so good. It's been decent enough. Now Ivan was he was caught yesterday for the penalty, which eventually was driven wide, but he just got probably caught a bit side. But that was his first run at a senior intercounty game. So look, it does take time, and we need to cut these people a bit of slack. So look, from Kilkenny's point of view and from Derek's point of view, he will be hoping that these guys are able to make it, because otherwise he will be reverting back to guys who maybe are heading to where, in some people's eyes, heading toward the exit door and maybe have to be retained because the younger and younger crowd are not able to step up. So that's not going to be an easy one for Derek and his colleagues over the next couple of weeks as they try and shape the team for the championship. Because bear in mind, as soon as the league is over, the championship is full on then after that, and the experimental days are over. Now, as I said, TJ Reid might make the last game. I suppose what would ideally suit Derek is if he was going into the Tipperary match, having secured the team's position in 1A, and he could give TJ some time then. He just gives him, he's working away, there's nothing wrong, he just feels he just needs a bit more time. But anybody, and Kilkenny people especially, if they think that having just TJ Reid is going to be is going to solve every problem for Kilkenny this year, that's not realistic. TJ is 38 years of age. He will still be a handful for any county on the field. If he starts, he'll be even more of a handful if he comes in, and he'll have people all over the place wondering what's going to happen. So I suspect that his game time with Kilkenny could alter between starting some days and maybe coming on other days. But look, Derek will see it firsthand what's happening in training, and he'll make that call. So I wouldn't like to prejudge it, but he's still a serious hurler to have on the available on the panel anyway. That's for sure.
Is it just TJ Mullen you're down at the minute?
That's a Fionn McAsey is injured as
Oh
well
yeah,
now. I mean, I have time for that guy. He's a big, physically big, strong guy. Probably has not totally nailed down a position yet, but he does come with big options. Tom Phelan from my own club came back yesterday after the best part of nearly 2 years away. No, I'd be blunt about it, I was very surprised that I knew from talking to Derek he was coming back, but I was surprised he could come back as early because Tom had horrendous injuries and missed our club scene as well a fair bit last year. But look, he was a help. He'd done one or two nice things when he came on yesterday. But Tom is probably going to be an impact player as well. But he does offer something slightly different in the forwards. I mean, he was at the heart of winning the ball that set up the goal yesterday, which passed to Lee Moore and then to Owen Cody. So he will offer something different. But again, I suspect a bit player rather than a guaranteed starter. But with the way the hurling has gone now, you need a 30-man panel now and be able to have versatility in your team.
would you expect McAsey to be back on Saturday or?
I'm not sure if he's still from injury. He was injured now. I'm not sure if he's
Yeah.
sorted yet, to be honest about it. I'd love to see him back because, quite honestly, he needs game time, absolutely needs game time. But I think he's a serious hurler. Played most of his hurling for Kerry in the half back line. I think that's probably his best position as well. But I do think he's a big, strong player now, and I'd like to see more of him now. I think in terms of fringe players, he might be one could have a lot to offer Kilkenny.
Yeah, David Berko could actually be out. The fact he's playing the Crow Cup
Well, he's not
semi-final.
going to be playing. Well, he won't be playing next weekend
Yeah,
because David will be centre half back and captain of St. Kieran's playing against Nina CBS in
yeah.
Rathdowney at 12 o'clock on Saturday. So I can't see him heading all the way over to Salt Hill and talking out. In fact, I was very surprised that he was even brought on yesterday instead of Ivan Bulger in the last couple of minutes. I'm not sure what the logic of that was, but I think David's priorities now should be to see out with Kieran's because Kieran's will have, they'll have it all to do against the Harty Cup. They're a good, strong team, Kieran's now, to be fair, but they'll have it all to do now against the Harty Cup champions. And then I know Presat and I are really, really, Cathal Moore is really, really looking to win a Crow Cup badly for that school. And, they're going to have a right ding dong battle with Flannans. I think that's in Bay on Saturday as well at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, it's in Kilbecanty.
Okay, yeah, Bakerley, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Kilbecanty, Saturday at 1 there. Preston and I play. Kieran Lean obviously is involved in the Galway Senior Hurling panel at the minute. He'll be playing for Preston and I too.
Yeah.
In that one. Just in terms of what kind of game we can expect, Nicky, on Saturday. You're obviously talking there about a couple of the Kilkenny absentees at the minute. If we look over at the Galway side of things, John Fleming obviously out at the minute, Dahi Burke, Gavin Lee, Rory Burke, Éanna Murphy, a couple of these players sidelined through injury. It's probably nearly a good thing in one sense, maybe with a couple of players out, you just expect both of these teams to go for it and have a lash off it with, I suppose, there will be stronger teams when these sides meet on the 19th of April.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. I think the problem with Salt Hill is, and I obviously in my day, which is not today or yesterday, playing over in Salt Hill, you don't know what the weather is going to be like. It's not the easiest of venues if there's a wind howling. I do hope that we're after coming through a horrendous period with wet pitches and conditions for hurling in particular have been very difficult. So hopefully on Saturday evening it won't be too bad. But Salt Hill can often define the way the game goes depending on rain and wind and all of that. And I wouldn't put that down as any more advantageous to Galway than it would to be Kilkenny or vice versa. So I wouldn't put it that way. But I think I'm looking forward to see, as I say, some new names on the Kilkenny team, but more especially get to know more of the names on the Galway team as well. And I think at the end of the day, it's Cahill Mannion is still he's still the driving force for the Galway team. There's no doubt about it. At centre half forward, he has been the conductor of the orchestra, if I could put it that way. But some of the other players are now stepping up, and I suppose we won't really know until the championship. I mean, they've done okay. They've got their two wins today, the same as Kilkenny. They're in the same position. Home advantage is always should be a little bit of an advantage, but at the same time, there's a lot of them players are will have come up against Kilkenny at underage, and they've done okay, but Kilkenny have also been there or thereabouts. So there's nothing much to choose between the two teams, either during current league form or over the last couple of years playing underage, or even in the Leinster Championship. It's been relatively tight in that. So going into this game on Saturday, there's not anything you can clearly say that gives one team a huge advantage over the other. I do think there'll be a big effort from both teams. I do think they'll want to, apart from wanting to make sure they retain their league status, I do think they'll want to lay down a marker. And it's a big opportunity for a lot of players on both sides to put up their hand and say, look, I'm still around for the championship. Because on the Kilkenny team, look, there's probably eight or nine you could say are penciled in for the championship at this stage. But
Mm.
it's a long time since we went in towards the end of the league and say, look, there's five or six positions wherever they might be on the team up for grabs on the Kilkenny team. That's not too often we've said that, and possibly the same could be said of Galway, as younger players try to nail down their position, and Hall and his selectors, Freddie Ford and that, and they look at and see, are these guys going to be up for the cut and thrust of the championship? Because you're dead right, because when they meet in mid-April, I mean, you'd like to think the ground is better, the ball will be moving faster. There's lots of things will be better from that point of view. So the the selectors will have to see how well their particular set of players will be able to adapt to circumstances come then.
How do you see the Bobo keeper race at the minute?
Well, sure, look at, I mean, Kilkenny have won the damn thing for so often now at this stage, you nearly have to hard to remember when anybody else won it. I would say, to be fair, that the kicked goal from Killian Buckley, I think that was probably a game that Kilkenny were desperately fortunate. I think Henry was very, very unlucky he didn't win a Leinster title with Galway that particular day. But I mean, the ball, look, it's really up to Galway now to really go for this. I think Dublin are very serious contenders here this year. They do have a blow a little bit hot and cold, but I do think they're serious contenders. If they're going to make the breakthrough, I think they have the squad capable of doing that now. We'll know a little bit more about have Galway got the squad over the next couple of matches. We'll see how they're shaping up. But and when it comes to Wexford, God, you never dismiss Wexford in Leinster. Now I know I'm being maybe a bit harsh on the likes of obviously Offaly, but Offaly just haven't got the personnel at the moment. But when the ground gets harder and the ball moves a bit faster, Offaly might move up a couple of notches then and maybe ask questions of the team. But I see it as relatively open. I mean, the fact that Kilkenny have won it, what's now for 6 years in a row or something like that. Um, God, surely the other counties and Galway maybe especially, it's time for them to be stand up and say, look, we need to win this damn cup once and for all. It's so long since we won it. Kilkenny will do what Kilkenny does. They'll go out and give it the usual 100%, want to retain the cup and work it on that basis and hopefully have more of their players back. And with the harder ground and the ball moving fast, that Kilkenny prefers, that's Kilkenny's game. They thrive better in that sort of environment. And that's why it's a very open Leinster Championship. And I would put this definitely Probably, if I'm realistic, Kilkenny, Dublin, and Galway are probably the three more likely winners there in that. But Wexford, they're just they find something when they play Kilkenny, especially. But then there'll be fair rattles between themselves and Dublin as well. There was a feisty game there a couple of weeks ago, and as Galway know, you don't take Wexford for granted at any stage. So I wouldn't dismiss them, but I'm purely going on the basis that probably Kilkenny, Dublin, and Galway just maybe are just showing a marginally a little bit more at the moment. But might change my mind before the first ball is thrown in after we see how the leagues finish up.
In terms of the Leinster Championship, where do you feel it's at? Because you're hearing a lot of commentary at the minute about obviously the Munster Championship and how it's much harder to get out of Munster than Leinster at the minute. What's your own view when it comes to that?
Look, that's fair enough. I can't argue with that. I mean, you have five very serious contenders in Munster, and any given day, picking three out of that is not going to be easy. To be quite frank about it, you're going to be leaving out two strong teams. Leinster, in an overall context, is not as strong, and that's the reality of it at the moment. But having said that, I mean, Kilkenny has been the standard bearers for Leinster for the last couple of years. They very nearly got through. I mean, Robert Dial's save from on the line from John Donnelly at the end of last year's semi-final. If that didn't happen, Kilkenny were in the All-Ireland final, and they would have been playing Cork. So who knows? You saw Dublin defeated Limerick. Now you could say, was the reason for that Limerick were a bit complacent, or was it the fact that Limerick were pretty exhausted after the Munster Championship and just weren't nailed? So sometimes the Munster Championship, for all it has to offer, and it has a lot to offer, sometimes the teams can be physically drained when they come out of the province of Munster, and maybe Leinster, while it's a very competitive province in the main, it just might not have the same intensity in a total context, and that maybe at times gives Leinster counties a reasonable chance. But look, in terms of hype, in terms of crowds, in terms of all of that, you have to say, to be fair, Munster is ahead of Leinster in that regard.
In terms then of Saturday, how do you see it going?
I think there won't be a lot in it. I mean, I think you'll see a big battle from Kilkenny, and as I said, there's so many new players involved on Saturday evening, Paul. I think it's not going to be easy to call this one. Um, I don't go a lot with the home advantage thing, but it might be a factor. I think the weather could be a factor as well. Salt Hill is notorious if it's wet and windy and all of that sort of stuff that could have a bearing on the game, and all of that. No, I think it could be a very tight game. It's very difficult to call it. I think Kilkenny are well capable of going up there and winning the match, but equally Galway are capable of winning it as well. I think the league so far has shown that there's not much between the two teams, and they generally bring out the best of one another whenever they play one another, and I'm expecting that on Saturday evening as well. So look at, as it turns out, maybe both teams might be content enough to get a point out of it, but they won't be playing for a draw. The hurling teams don't do that anyway, so very hard to call it, Paul. I'd be reasonably hoping that Kilkenny can put in a big performance, but I'd equally say that Galway have shown enough in certainly yesterday against Waterford that they have stepped up a little bit, and they'll have a bit of a pep in their step after the Waterford match, whereas Kilkenny, they won't be feeling sorry for themselves. They'll be having a good go at it in training tomorrow night. But I think Galway are coming into the game maybe with a little bit more positivity than Kilkenny, given the way the result has gone. But you don't know, and I mean, we don't know as yet what players might or might not be played. Have maybe some of them picked up further injuries over the last couple of days, or might even pick up injuries in training. So that can have a bearing on matters as well. So you'd probably marginally favour the home side, but I wouldn't be dismissing Kilkenny's chances at all.
It's important for Galway to get a result considering how the games last year, particularly the two games in the round robin and Leinster final, went for Galway.
I wouldn't argue with you there. Look, you always go to lay down a marker. I mean, and chatting to Ben O'Connor after the match yesterday, he's a very clear attitude. He wants to win every match he plays with Galway, or with Cork, I beg your pardon. He wants to win every match. And it does look like he's heading for a league final against Limerick, which will be played, they'll play this weekend, and a league final will be played in the Gaelic grounds as well after a long-standing agreement between those two counties. So the attitude of any manager has to be you go out and win every match. Jerry King wants to do that. Micheál Donoghue wants to do that. And that's the only way. And when you have a number of new players on the team, nothing helps confidence more than continually winning matches and building the spirit from that context. And both managers will be gung ho for a victory on Saturday night, and probably Galway need to win this match more than Kilkenny. But I'm not suggesting Kilkenny are not going over there and intending to win it. But Galway need to probably lay down a marker for the championship, given that it's only a few weeks away. When did you say the 19th of
19
April?
people, yeah.
Sure, look at it's only what 5 or 6 weeks away. I mean, and the season is moving on at a rapid pace.
Just on it and on attendances then, Nicky, like obviously we were talking about Munster hurling there and Leinster hurling. I think at the weekend it was probably it's a telling stat really. Just under 4,200 yesterday at Galway, Waterford. We seen last year in the round robin it wasn't a brilliant attendance in Nolan Park either when Galway played Kilkenny. Is that a concern moving into the Leinster Championship?
Attendances generally looked there was 14 over 14,000 in Nolan Park yesterday, and probably I'd say 10 of those were probably Cork and 4 were Kilkenny. To be honest about it, no Cork are the when it comes to some Cork people were saying to me at the weekend, sure, aren't Cork bankroll in the GA at the moment. But look, they're bringing out fierce numbers. There's going to be a huge crowd in the Gaelic grounds on Saturday night. No, Cork supporters are buzzing for this team, and I mean coming after the collapse in the All Ireland final last year. I know there's new management in there, but the supporters are crying out for success, and we'll talk again maybe talking about the championship, but Cork still have work to do to win an All Ireland final in my view. But no, it's kind of gone that way now. People are see if I take a Saturday evening over in Salt Hill, Paul. It's not easy to go to Salt Hill on a Saturday evening. There's shopping all around Galway, getting in through the traffic and across to that side of the city if you're coming in through the whole Kilkenny side. So you're not going to see a big support there from Kilkenny, to be honest about it. It's live on television and it's just a pure inconvenience. And if you say, sure, if you're going to stay over there for the weekend, sure, it'll cost you, you know, you want to take out a mortgage to stay in a hotel now, it costs so much and that, you know. So these are the difficulties that are facing the GA when it comes to these type of games. I mean, there's nothing nicer than to go over and spend a week, and if you can in Galway, I love going over there. But I'm just talking in general about supporters that there'll be a cohort of Kilkenny supporters will go to the North Pole to follow the team. But a Saturday evening at 5:15, and while the new time or the brighter evenings are setting in, at the same time, by the time you'd be leaving Galway to come home, it probably you'd be leaving Salt Hill at 7, 8 o'clock maybe by the time you get your car and all of that, and it's a long drive home. So look, I don't think there'll be a huge crowd. There will be a good crowd from Galway there. There's really no excuse for them. They have a team going pretty well at the moment. They have their great rivals, Kilkenny, coming to town. So I'd say you'll see a great crowd from Galway there, all right. But I mean, it still probably won't break much, 6 or 7 thousand, I'd say.
Yeah, you'd be hoping anyways there'd be an increase from the Waterford game
Yeah,
from the weekend anyways. Uh, just before we finish as well, as I mentioned, Presats and Rye they play Flannans on Saturday at 1 o'clock in Kilbacety in the Croke Cup semi-final. Then in the Senior B hurling, Portumna Community School who bet HRC in the Connacht B hurling final at the weekend. They play Tralee CBS at 12 o'clock in Tulla and in the Senior C. Uh, Hurling semi-final, Clonfert College Ballinasloe, formerly known as Gerberley College. They take on St. Joseph's Barceley at 1 o'clock in Banagher. Clonfert College Ballinasloe defeated Roscommon CBS today. It was 116 to 116 after extra time. Went all the way to penalties. Clonfert winning 3-2 on penalties after 7 penalties. And just a word for that, Nicky. I've been at a couple of games over the last few weeks. I was at Rafels and Kieran's in the Crook Cup quarter final, and the Kieran Ultras, in fairness, they bring a great atmosphere to it. And even today, I was at a Connacht C hurling final, and Clonfert College and Roscommon CBS as well, bringing a great atmosphere to it. It's special about schools hurling, isn't it?
oh, big time. Yeah, I've been at an awful lot of those games. The only reason I wasn't at the Kieran's and St. Raphael's semi-final was that I had to cover the an All-Ireland Colleges Camogie A final between Loretta Kilkenny and Ursulines of Thurles. Richie Power, my colleague on the former Kilkenny hurler senior, he was actually covering that match for us at Portumna, or yeah, St. Raphael's and St. Kieran's. And look, St. Kieran's had to work very hard. I mean, coming in towards the latter stages, Raphael's were still holding on very well, but Kieran's put on a spurt in the end and in injury time. And the overall result, while Kieran's deserved to win, it was a lot tighter. But I'm sure Cathal Moore will be really hoping for big things from Presat and Roy, because this year on 2 occasions his camogie teams, his senior camogie team, and his junior camogie team, they were beaten by Loretta Kilkenny in both of them, and Loretta went on to win the two All-Ireland finals. So I'd say Cahill and his colleagues in Presat and Rye are fed up losing, so they'll be going all out to defeat Flannans, who they were playing CBC Kilkenny, formerly Kilkenny CBS, in the quarter final recently, and I saw some of that game on the channel, the television channel, and I just thought that I thought that Kilkenny school limped out easily enough out of it. They had opportunities in the second half to get a grip on the game. They were against the wind, admittedly, but I thought they really thrown in the towel very easily. And obviously, Flannans will now obviously play Presat and Rye, but just because Presat and Rye won the Connacht title doesn't mean they're automatically going to win this semi-final. But it's a chance for them to get to the All-Ireland final in Croke Park on St. Patrick's Day.
Absolutely, and best of luck to all those schools at the weekend. And Galway Kilkenny, 5:15 Saturday evening in Pearse Stadium. And for supporters who can't make it, it's live on RT as well. But Nickey Brennan, thanks a million for your time.
Thank you, Paul. A pleasure as always talking to you. We'll talk soon.